The Empty Library. It might sound like the start of a bad joke about libraries, but it's actually the name of a memorial in Berlin, Germany, dedicated to the remembrance of the Nazi book burnings that took place on May 10, 1933. The Empty Library, also known as Bibliothek, was made by sculptor Mika Ullmann in the Babyplatz in Berlin, the site of the burnings. The memorial itself is set in the cobblestones of the plaza and contains a collection of empty subterranean bookcases to mark the location where books deemed impure and dangerous were burned. It's 1933 in Germany, the first year of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party being in power. Hitler and his party had ran on a steady campaign of bigotry and fear, promising anyone who listened that he and his party would pull Germany out of the Great Depression, put Germany on the world stage as a superpower, and restore German cultural values which he claimed were decaying because of groups he deemed as an appropriate scapegoat. Jewish and Roma people, communists, liberals, homosexuals, disabled people, and others. On March 7th and 8th, stormtroopers, the paramilitary organization of the Nazi Party, raided a bookstore and a newspaper editorial office linked with the Social Democratic Party of Germany, but this would only be a precursor to more destruction of literature. A month later, the Nazi German Student Association's main office for press and propaganda announced a nationwide initiative against the un-German spirit. The student union published the 12 Theses, a document calling for students to rise up to protect and cultivate a pure national language and culture, and destroy any and all work that they considered un-German, particularly focusing on, quote, overcoming Jewish intellectualism and the resulting liberal decay in the German spirit. Local chapters of the groups began drawing up literary blacklists that included Jewish, Marxist, socialist, anti-family, and anti-German literature. Students across the nation met with professors and combed through libraries to find any and all material that would not fit into their vision of a perfect and pure German society. As historian William F. Meinig Jr. points out, they didn't see themselves as suppressing culture, they saw themselves as advancing Aryan German culture. To them, they were cultivating the only culture worthy of existence. The Berlin chapter of the Student Union went so far as raiding materials from the Institute of Sexual Research, a facility that was like no other at the time, and is known as the first sexology institute in the world. Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, the head of the institute and one of the founders, was himself Jewish and gay, and recognized that people have natural variations in sexuality, sex, and gender. The institute conducted groundbreaking research on sexuality and gender identity. They provided gender-affirming treatment for patients. They had a marriage and sex counseling office, and they aimed to educate the public and other professionals on topics regarding their work. Hirschfeld and the institute's progressive approach is best summed up by the Latin phrase inscribed on their building, per scientum ad justium, through science to justice. Work done at the institute was invaluable to queer people, then and now, and to society as a whole. Ultimately, the institute was targeted for their work, and on May 6th, the institute was greeted with a brass band providing the soundtrack to students destroying and looting the institute. Students gave speeches in front of the raided research center and sang the Nazi anthem. Later that day, stormtroopers would come to the institute to continue the looting. 4 days later, on May 10, 1933, the book burnings began. Students gathered at Orpenplatz. Some carried books in their arms, others drove trucks of looted material to the scene. Books, magazines, articles, newspapers, all dumped onto the pyres that had been built days before in anticipation. Scrap paper with even an inkling of dissent would not have been safe from this funeral pyre. In 34 university towns across Germany, over 25,000 books were destroyed, and folks sang songs, swore oaths to continue their work, and condemned writers. The Berlin crowd had a special guest, Joseph Goebbels, the head of Nazi propaganda, who delivered a speech to 40,000 people gathered in the plaza praising the burnings, saying, "No to decadence and moral corruption. Yes to decency and morality in the family and state." Reactions to this destruction were varied. Some German intellectuals thought this was merely a symptom of revolutionary fever that would die down in time. Others saw this book burning for what it was, the opening act to a terrible end where millions of people were brutalized and murdered. The Empty Library is a stark but much-needed reminder of what was lost that night. 25,000 books were purposely targeted and annihilated. By 1945, 11 million people, including 6 million Jews, 3.3 million Soviet prisoners of war, hundreds of thousands of Romani, hundreds of thousands of disabled people, tens of thousands of political dissenters, and hundreds of gay and bisexual men had been purposely targeted and murdered by Hitler and his Nazi party. These 11 million people were doctors, authors, researchers, teachers, grocers, bank tellers, shoe shiners, families and friends, and most importantly, human beings. Books are not just pages. They are representative of diverse ideas and experiences and the people who share them. Azar Nafisi, author of Read Dangerously, The Subversive Power of Literature in Troubling Times, writes, "Books know no limits or borders. They create longings and unexpected passions. They pose more questions than answers. They represent the unruly world, filled with contradictions and complications, a world that threatens the totalitarian mindset by being beyond its control." Years later, after the main structure of the memorial was built, a bronze plaque with a quote from the German Jewish writer Heinrich Heine's play Almanzor was inlaid in the cobblestone. His work would end up on Nazi literary blacklists, and copies of his writing were most likely burnt on that fateful night. Yet his words from 1820 rise from the ashes. This was but a prelude. Where they burn books, they ultimately burn people.